Mike Morse, I just want to give a quick introduction to. He is always so gracious with his time and wisdom. He's the author of the #1 book, I would argue, on how to scale a law firm, Fireproof. It's an Amazon #1 bestseller. It's one of the only practitioner-written books, that actually teaches the complexity, I should say the simplicity of scaling a law firm. And there's another book written by John Morgan called Can't Teach Hungry. And I would put this book at the same level, if not higher, than Can't Teach Hungry because of how tactical it is and how it teaches a law firm lawyer to become a law firm CEO, right? And when I first met Mike Morse, I interviewed him on my talk show, and everyone just wouldn't stop raving about him. And it's very, very rare that we get that crazy of a crowd response. So I wanted to bring the #1 personal injury lawyer in Michigan. Let's give one more big round of applause for those of you here in person and those of you virtually. Unmute. Give a huge round of applause for Mike Morse one more time. Okay, just making sure everyone's awake. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. You always flatter me. You always embarrass me, but thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Mike, I know this was a spontaneous FaceTime last night with me, you, and Daryl Isaacs.
Yep.
And I FaceTimed Mike Morse last night, and he immediately goes, yes, which he always does with our events. So gracious with his time. So, Mike, what I first wanted you to do was, we had Jocko Willink speak yesterday, and I wanted to ask you a question about letting go of control. How many employees do you have right now?
170-ish.
Give it up for that, everyone. 170 employees. Okay. How the heck do you manage all of those people, or do you?
Yeah, well, it's all about the org chart. It's all about delegation. It's all about setting up the systems right. As you've seen my speech, you've seen me do my Fireproof talk. It started off when I had 20 direct reports, and I have a little circle right around my head where everybody's coming to me. And I had a caseload, and I did everything for my office. I got all the clients, and I had 20 people coming to me. That was it. Impossible. And I'm sure that there's lots of people in this audience who are having that same exact experience. If they want to grow and scale, they got to figure it out. So our org chart recommendation is having a visionary of a company, an owner, usually the founder. Underneath that person is the COO, or integrator as we call them. And then underneath that person are all the managers. And underneath the managers is all the staff. And if you set it up right at the beginning, you could go from 20 people to 170 people, and you still only have one direct report. And I know I'm simplifying the heck out of this, right? But it's exactly what we did. It's exactly what we're training our Fireproof clients to do, and it's working. I see it working every day. But when I walk into a law firm, when I look under the hood, their org chart is a mess. I have a new client in Florida. Great guy, built a great firm, but he's doing everything, and he's still handling 200 cases and trying to scale. It's impossible. You can't do both. You're either a technician, you're either a lawyer who's handling a lot of cases, or you're the CEO, COO, or one of those two, with a visionary, and you're growing. It's one of the two. You cannot do both. You could get to a certain level, but then you're done. You're going to hit the ceiling. You're done. You can't do any more. So you got to be good with your ego. You got to be good to delegate, right? Mm-hmm. You got to let go of it. You got to let go of the work. You got to realize that there's other people just as good of you, and I would dare to say better than you at certain things. And I know that there's people in your audience right now thinking, well, there's nobody better than me at trying a case. There's nobody better than me at handling TBI cases. There's nobody better than me at negotiating. There's nobody better than me at whatever it is. And I'm here to challenge you that maybe there is. And throughout the years, the last 15 years since I've been treating my law firm like a business, I have found those people. I've gone from 20 people to 170 people. I've gone from bringing in $5 million in revenue to $55 million in revenue, because I get what you just asked me. And I had no idea what you were going to ask me. You always do this to me. But this is probably the #1 thing if you want to scale and you want happiness and predictability and more money and just a better life. You got to figure this out.
Give it up for that answer, everyone. Jeez. That is a complete continuation. We had Jocko Willink, like I said yesterday, and he talked about, him being in charge of a SEAL platoon and how, all of his leadership skills were learned by letting others make mistakes and not freaking out when they make the mistakes. And oftentimes, the story that I hear in lawyers' minds is, you don't get it, Bill. I'm a lawyer. You're in marketing. You can make mistakes and not lose your bar license like I can. So easy for you, Bill. You can let go of the vine because you're not going to get arrested or lose your license if you make a mistake. So my question to you is, what is the reality about making mistakes on, I guess, casework? I don't even know how I'd word it, but like, what is the real outcome when you start delegating elements of casework, intake, client work, etc.? What's the worst case scenario as you see it if you're a reasonable business owner that's not going to hire crazy people that are going to rip off your clients?
Well, you got to hire well. You got to know your core values, your firm values. Everybody here should do that exercise. And then you're going to hire people who are aligned with you. You're going to do some personality tests. You're going to check references if you want to. You're going to do a really good interview process. You're going to hire slow. So assuming you have the right people who align with your values, you are going to manage those people and train those people. And you have processes in place. So we have dozens and dozens and dozens of processes in place. So every time I get a new lawyer, a new paralegal, a new secretary, they get to see how we do things at the Mike Morse Law Firm. And we train on that. We manage on that. We hold people accountable on that. And of course, people are going to make mistakes, but we are all over it. Mistakes are going to happen. They call it the practice of law for a reason. So that there's no great answer on that, but you're going to manage them. You're going to train them. Maybe you're going to test them once they have started to make sure they grasp the concepts. We do kind of like a Padawan system where a lot of our lawyers and paralegals are shadowing for as long as it takes a mentor in my organization until they get it. And once they get it, we let them loose, and then we keep monitoring them, and we keep allowing them to ask questions, and we allow them to make mistakes, but hopefully they're little mistakes. Hopefully they're not blowing statutes. Hopefully they're not doing stupid stuff. And you got to have a very good system in place. You have to have people looking. We have auditors in our organization to make sure that deadlines are made, statute of limitations are made, witness lists are filed on time, et cetera. So it doesn't stop just by hiring the right person. But eventually that right person turns out to be, a superstar, hopefully, and you can let go and they run with it. And that's, I'd say, most of my people.
It's interesting because it's a process of trust building, right? So when you first start working with someone, let's say you hire someone new, it's a process of, them earning your trust, vice versa, right? Do they want to keep working with your firm, and vice versa? Do you trust them to manage the responsibilities? And I'm curious, have you ever read the book No Rules Rules by the founder of Netflix?
I don't think so.
It's a game changer. I would highly recommend it. It's the best book on culture I've ever read in my life, and I just read it a few weeks ago. And the book No Rules Rules talks about the concept of talent density. So a lot of law firms get obsessed with building all these processes, right? Because they're insuring against a team that they don't trust, which is it's actually a root problem that's harder to solve than building processes. The harder problem is to ask, do I have the right people on the bus? And what Netflix does is they put very little emphasis on standard operating procedures. They put emphasis on hiring extremely talented people, pay them top of market, pay them an arm and a leg, as they say, and then expect them to create the processes. So I'm curious, and then they also break this down. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. In a law firm, so in Netflix, they identify it as operational team members. These are people who, if they're an absolute high performer, you can only imagine to get maybe 1.5x of a additional output from a top performer. For example, the best ice cream truck driver in the world, he can't produce more than 1.5x a second or third place ice cream truck driver. There's constraints to an operational role. Whereas for high production roles, there's sometimes a 20x return, right? So for a creative role, as they call it in the book, so I guess that would be maybe like a lawyer. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, just as we're kind of brainstorming. This is what we would talk about on a weekend. So I just want to give a public brainstorming with you. What are your thoughts about what are the high talent density roles versus what are the operational roles in a law firm?
So it's a good question. You and I actually have never talked about this one. I've actually talked about this recently with my team. I'm dealing with something right this second. Actually, this morning I had a 9 a.m. meeting on this. I have 20 file managers, we call them, who are running the pre-suit files before we file suit. We file suit on 85% of our cases at our firm. And the file managers have more processes and procedures and boxes to check and T's to cross and I's to dot more than anybody in my firm. Because when you're dealing with insurance and treatment and doctors and liens, and it doesn't matter what type of business you're in, your pre-suit people have to make sure that everything's going right. I mean, they're more important than the lawyers until the lawyers get in, right? So I have some people who've been with me for 15 years and they say, Michael, I don't want to follow the processes. I know the processes by heart. I move in a gut basis because I've been doing this so long. I'm so smart. I'm your top performers. I don't need processes. But then I have new people who haven't been there that long. The people you're talking about, I think we're using different language, but it's the newer people, the people who are training, maybe the people who don't have, maybe they're not as smart, right? I mean, I'm not thinking of anybody who's not smart, but they may not have the experience. And there's a mix. And I said to them this morning, I had 4 of my top performers on the call this morning, and I said, look, we need processes anyway, even though you don't want it. But what I want is I do want them to write the process. So it's interesting. I haven't read the Netflix book, but I'm asking the 4 of them to write a process. We're trying to get a certain metric down. Doesn't matter what the metric is, but we're watching our data. We're trying to get our Jumbotron tells us something is out of whack. We're trying to get that number down. And I'm asking them to fix it. And I'm asking them to come up with processes so then we can roll it out to the entire firm. I have my smartest people saying, this is what needs to be done. I'm not saying it. They're saying it, which I think is smart. We're going to have whys. And we're going to show them how important this particular metric is. And and when these people leave, this is still the process. That's the thing. If these people all quit tomorrow or something changed tomorrow, I have my process in place. And the analogy is, of course, McDonald's. The analogy is the E-Myth. You're one of your favorite books. I mean,
by the way, I'm interviewing Gerber on Tuesday.
Oh, nice.
I'm excited.
That's great. I'll tune into that. So it's the same thing. It's like you never know. You can't just have one person who knows how to do something. So we have processes upon processes, which is tedious. Some people don't like them. But when a new person starts, here they are. You can't say I never told you. This is how we do things, from answering the phone to punching in to handling a file to talking to the clients the first time, second time, third time, fourth time. These are the things that we want you to get out of people, put them in the system. And so that's a long answer to, I don't even know what your question was anymore, but that's where my brain went when you asked me that.
Hey, this sounds like our brainstorming session, so this is good.
Yes.
And this is Daryl Isaac spoke yesterday. He did our VIP dinner, and he was talking so much about the power of masterminds, which I know you're super into. The $1 billion verdict plus mastermind. What's that mastermind called again?
It's something like he called it like the brain trust or something silly like that.
And it's so interesting because interviewing and connecting with attorneys of your size, every single one of them is obsessed with masterminds. I've never met an attorney who's doing over $40 million in fees that is just doing it all alone. It's very fascinating. And it's funny, I mentioned the book, No Rules Rules, and Mike immediately rushes to grab a pen, and he's going to read the book and devour it and text me after he reads it. It's just this curiosity factor.
It's mastering your craft. It's mastering your craft. That's what everybody in this group that I'm in, these $1 billion winning group that I'm new to. The 2021 was my first year in that group that Daryl had put together. There's 13 or 14 law firms. And it's shocking to me, as much success as these people have, that they are still trying to master their craft, as is Daryl Isaacs, as am I. some people would argue that, why are they still doing it, right? They have enough of whatever. And it's everybody doesn't have this. I've met lots of lawyers who don't have this. And John Knockhazel, my co-author of Fireproof, calls it mastery of craft, because people look at me all the time. Why are you so interested in this? Why are you so relentless about the pursuit to make the best intake department in the country, to make sure that we have the best this, the best that? It's how we're wired, and not everybody is wired that way.
I love that. David Buckley, you want to come on stage real quick? David Buckley gave me give it up for David Buckley, everyone. All right, so Mike Morse, you don't know this, okay? But when I got coming on stage, David Buckley ran up to me and he gave me a slip that says, I don't know if the camera can see this, if you can zoom in or show it on virtual. It says, "My vision is to be the Mike Morse of New Hampshire." Okay?
So Mike.
Here.
Yes, sir.
So one of the very first books I read.
Make sure you hold it up so virtual can hear you.
Okay.
You got to turn it on. Yep.
Is this thing on? Hello, can you hear me now?
There it is. Good.
Yes.
Sure. So Mike, one of the very first books I read when I got into Bill's program was Fireproof. Mm-hmm. And that really, if anyone hasn't read Fireproof, raise your hands. Who has not read Fireproof? Show of hands. You all got to read Fireproof, okay? If you are interested in this, if you're interested in what Bill is offering and what Andy's offering, especially on the coaching side of things, the foundation that you're going to build on is what Mike Morse has written about in Fireproof. That inspired me. That has made me want to stay on this path. Everything that Mike has done inspired me to be able to do the same thing. All right, and that means coming to these conventions. That means coming to guys like Bill and Andy and all you other people out there who are part of a group, part of a community, all right? And we all feed and build off each other. And you have someone who has blazed a path like Mike and like Craig and like Aaron, who can show you the way. And it can be done. And I'm telling you, every time I see Mike, I am re-inspired of what my vision is to follow him. So, I mean, I'll give it back to the group here. But I'm telling you, if you haven't read Fireproof, you got to read Fireproof.
Yep,
You just have to.
Give it up for David Buckley, everyone.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much. I got chills hearing you talk, man. That's so flattering. Bill knows I get embarrassed. But I really do appreciate those kind words.
Yeah, David Bruno just bought the book on Amazon right now. I love the action takers in here.